As the 2024 elections continue to get closer, Democrats keep getting new warning signs about black voter support. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video. And today, it is time that we talk about the 2024 presidential election. Because everyone, it appears that Democrats are starting to, at least according to Politico, get more warning signs about support in their biggest voter group, black voters. Because, well, there's been many warning signs since even 2020 that Democrats are starting to struggle comparatively with how they've done in the past with their core voters. Black voters, that's of course what I'm talking about. Now let me be clear. I am not saying Republicans are going to get 30% of black voters. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, Brexit's real. None of that. I am saying, however, that this article from Politico really demonstrates what we've been noticing for a couple of years. That, hey, these numbers, they're not good for Democrats. Yes, they still win these voters by 50, 60 points, but historically they've won them by 80 to 90. So it's like, hold on, what's going on here? This isn't just a fluke anymore. There's something going on more than just a one-off occurrence. Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below. Subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Guys, just for $1 a month, you can join Real American. This is the best way to support the daily content that we all know and love. So I hope and recommend you join the channel today. Alright, everybody. And again, this article from Politico, this may be like somebody trying to tell Democrats, indirectly, hey, guys, this is a code red. This is a big problem here. You better look at it quickly before it backfires even more. But again, I'm not saying Brexit's going to happen. I'm not saying Republicans will get 40% of the vote with black voters. But just put it this way. If they do like 3-4% better with black voters and Trump does the same with white, Hispanics, etc., that may be enough to give him the presidency. That's what we're talking about here. Just a couple percent more and slight turnout differences. Trump's the president. That's why it's like, kind of important to start discussing what's going on here. Because this isn't just a fluke anymore. We're seeing this not just in 2020. We saw this in 2021, 2022, 2023. We're noticing a trend. So let's look at it. Democrats are about to find out how worried they need to be about black voter support. After a lot of hand-wringing in recent years, elections next month in Mississippi and Virginia, two southern states with large black populations, will offer one final robust reading going into 2024 on the extent of the slippage among Democrats' most reliable block of voters. Again, I am not one of those people that say this 3% turnout election is going to indicate, a blue tsunami. I'm not saying that, all right? But, if Democrats, do 10, 15 points worse in, 80% black precincts, next month, what does that tell you? If it's a turnout problem, okay, that could be part of it, all right? But doing 20, 30 points worse than some of these 80% precincts like they did in Louisiana, you're talking about record low turnout for those voters, which that doesn't seem like that's just going to magically switch next year. Or you're talking about potentially many black voters switching to the GOP. Again, I know that's low turnout stuff. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you can't just say low turnout and call it a day. You're talking about turnout that, if you correlate to past elections, that means you're not going to vote at all next year. But again, we'll get to that in a second. The warning signs have been flashing. President Joe Biden's approval rating with black voters has dropped disproportionately compared with white voters, polls show, driving down his overall numbers. That's a bit misleading because, if he does like 30 points worse with black voters, yeah, because he has a 90%, 90% of the voters he got with black voters. It's like kind of misleading, but still, he is struggling with that key voter block. Last week's election of Republican governor in Louisiana, the first in 8 years, suggested diminished voter enthusiasm in areas with the largest black populations. We said this last week. We got mocked for it, everybody. Then a week later, Politico puts out that. Remember all the crap I was getting about saying that, hey, this is either a disastrous turnout that could not be a good sign for next year for Democrats, or there are black voters that are starting to vote Republican at significant amounts. I don't think it's them voting like 30-40%, but I think it's something in between. And just this week, a prominent Democratic data firm published a report outlining declining support for Democrats in last year's midterm elections among younger black voters, black men, and black voters without college degrees. A Democrat firm. This isn't just turnout. Stop this crap that, a 15-point swing with these voters, that's just turnout. Okay, if it was like 2010 when it had a 2% turnout rate, that's one thing. But 2022 was fairly high turnout for a midterm. You don't get those swings just because of low turnout. What the turnout was very high for a midterm. There's no one simple answer for why Democrats are losing black support at the margins. Some conservative black voters are aligned with the GOP as the party becomes more ideologically homogenous. And inflation and other economic struggles in recent years, which have driven much of widespread dissatisfaction with Biden, have hit communities of color harder. What's clear is that Biden can't safely assume he'll be able to reassemble the coalition that he rode to victory 3 years ago. And this was always the problem with this coalition Biden had. He had minority working class voters and white college educated voters. College affluent, whatever you want to call these people. They're not educated. Most of them are indoctrinated. But either way, it doesn't matter. These are two completely different type of voters. I mean, you're screwed. You can't appeal to both of them. You have to appeal. You can only appeal to one of them because they're so different. And it seems like he actually failed with both, but he was never able to replicate that coalition that he had last in 2020. He never was going to hold on to it. Now, I'm not saying that Biden's going to lose no matter what next year, but I'm saying that the coalition is fracturing. This Politico article is mentioning that. Black support for Democrats has been slipping slightly for the better part of a decade, since Obama, the country's first black president, was last on the ballot in 2012. There are signs Republicans may have continued since 2020 to pull some black voters away from Democrats. That is bad news for Biden. In a Quinnipiac poll released this week, about 2 in 3 black voters, 65% said they approve the way Biden is handling his job as president. Guys, Biden got like 90% of the vote with black voters. That is a 25-point shift. Is that turnout? When it's an approval rating? At some point, this is just slightly more than just some, low turnout. When your approval's in the 60s as a Democrat with these voters? That's not a good sign. A Fox News poll earlier this month found Biden leading Trump in a hypothetical rematch among black voters by a roughly 3-1 margin, 74% to 26%. That may seem high, but it's down sharply from 2020 when Biden won 90% of black voters, according to the Democratic data from Catalyst. You went from 90% to 74%, according to Fox News. I understand that, sometimes they do tend to overstate Republican support with these voters. Fine. Trump was never pulling at 26% with these voters. Maybe 12, 13, 14. 26. That is like a 15-point shift from 2020. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but is this just a turnout problem now? I think it's something in between, but still. The firm releases studies of the electorate using records showing which people vote in the election. This week, it released new reports analysis voter subgroups, and its deep dive into black voters showed support for Democrats fell in last year's midterms. The new analysis found that 88% of black voters in the 2022 elections voted for the Democratic candidate in their congressional district, down from 91%. That's a 3-point shift. The steepest drops for Democrats were among black voters in the millennial and Gen Z generations, from 91% to 84%. A 7-point shift. A 7-point decrease, I should say. That's a 14-point shift towards the GOP. Black men went from 87% to 83%. Black voters in rural areas, 84 to 80%. And black voters without a college degree, 91 to 87%. Is this just a turnout problem? Again, I do think some of it has to do with turnout. That's one thing. But a decrease that large? You never even saw that back in 2010 or 2014 where the turnout was like 2%. The danger for Democrats among black voters is also about turnout. And last week's election for governor in Louisiana was the latest warning. Republican State Attorney General Jeff Landry won the election to replace term-limited Democrat Governor Bill Edwards. Landry was long expected to prevail in the end, but the timing and scope of his victory surprised many who thought he would finish under the 50% plus one threshold to win the seat outright. There's evidence that Democrats, and black voters in particular, didn't show up. Statewide turnout was about 36%, down a steep 10 points from 46%. But the turnout drop was even sharper in many of the state's parishes with large black populations. Of the 15 Louisiana parishes where census data shows at least 40% of residents are black, the turnout drop was greater than the statewide average of 10 of them, including the parishes containing the state's two largest cities, New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Yes, it's turnout to a lesser extent, but you're talking about a disastrous turnout even for a low-tier election like this. It still is 36% turnout statewide. That's much higher than it was in 2015, 2011. On the other end of the spectrum, 10 of the 15 parishes with the smallest black populations had turnout drops that were smaller than the statewide average. It will be a few weeks until official turnout data by race are available, but there does appear to be some connection between shifts in turnout at the parish level and the racial component of those places. This is what I'm saying, everybody. You don't just see this because of, turnout. Again, that's part of it. I'm not denying that. But last year, it was a high turnout election. It still was a 5-point shift towards the GOP. You had a black candidate for governor who, number one, failed to excite any kind of black turnout. Number two, ran 20 percentage points behind a white moderate Democrat. That should tell you everything. This guy was... Every Democrat was behind him. You're telling me this is just because of, because it's just a fluke, It's not a fluke at this point. 2021, we saw the same thing. 2022, saw the same thing. 2023, saw the same thing so far. Turnout in these elections have been high. For midterm and, an off-year election like this. They have. But still, black turnout's been garbage. You think they're going to magically go back to 2020 rates? This is a combination of low turnout and black voters, even if it's by 2, 3, 4 points, shifting Republican. It's starting to become more apparent that there's something happening here. And if next month, if like Mississippi swings 15 points Republican or something crazy, I don't think it will, or Virginia is a sweep for Republicans because some of the key races are in sizable black areas. At some point, that's not just turnout, because turnout's been high in Virginia for early voting. Stop this crap that it's all just turnout. Something's happening. We just got to see what happens. But hey, this is definitely a fascinating development. I mean, in a million years, no one would have thought that, you know, a Republican would be cracking 10, 12, 14% on a regular occurrence, let alone cracking 20 in some polls. That's what Trump is doing right now. But we just got to see what happens. Again, we are only in 2023, but at some point, this should be a big, fat red flag for Democrats next year. Whether it's low turnout, whether it's them collapsing with them, who knows? Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Thank you so much. Godspeed to all of you.